Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Naya Sim, and thank you all so much for all the love and support. Hope you all are doing great. Today, we'll be talking something very important, and it's about Charlie Kirk, who actually came out to ask why is it that most of the murder that is happening in United States is being committed by Black people and all that. And I am asking, why is it that all his videos, all he wants to do is talk about Black people, like the mass shooting that has been going on all over United States, that most of them, majority of them are I don't want I'm just saying, but you all know they peep you every day, almost every time. And I can really count how many Black people that has done that and the rest of it. And he went further to ask, why is it that Asians do not do something like that and all that? It's sad how they wake up every day to stereotype Black people and look for a way to group Black people into some certain places and then try to judge them, or stereotype them and all that. Now, I am really sick and tired of Charlie Kirk always race-baiting with Black people, looking for views and all that. And wait for that to say that Black people are always taking away jobs from Asians and all that. And there is what they call Black privilege. I am yet to see that Black privilege because I really do need it. And then why is it hard for them to talk about race? Because each time we try to talk about race to them, and they are always very uncomfortable. You know what? Let's get into this.
So Black people make up 13% of the American population.
Oh, 1350, my favorite.
Yes, exactly. Why do they commit 55% of all the murders?
Super great question. It's basically a very complex intersection of race and economic status. It's pretty well known that minority people tend to be in a lower economic status because of discrimination that
So
they
then why
faced.
don't poor Asians commit a lot of murders?
Also a great question. Asian people weren't originally brought to America on purpose like Black people, and they weren't already present here like natives.
Wait,
I'm not finished, please.
so Blacks murder because they were brought here 250 years
No,
ago?
I would like to finish.
Okay, just answer. It's very simple. Black.
I am answering.
No, I know, but you're not really.
I am.
Okay.
Asian Americans predominantly immigrate here for work reasons. They come from already wealthy countries. They're already wealthy when they get here. Crime is committed primarily
First
by
of all,
poorer
that's not
people.
true. In fact, it's the opposite. There's Black privilege right now. It's called affirmative action, where underqualified Blacks are taking Asians and white people's places in universities across the country. True or false?
True.
It's the opposite. There's Black privilege right now. It's called affirmative action, where underqualified Blacks are taking Asians and white people's places in universities across the country. True or false?
In 1965, an Immigration Act was passed in the United States that removed discrimination from people from Asian countries and people from Southeast and Eastern European countries from immigrating to the United States. This act allowed people from Asian countries to come into the United States with college degrees, so allowing them to be college educated. And if you had a college degree at that time in an Asian country, you were already well off to begin with. So you came to the US with your college degree, and then you were allowed more opportunities than most African Americans that were already here. So this just creates a generational wealth gap, because it was only in 1962 that racial discrimination was even removed from US colleges. The honest truth is that most Asian American students don't have to go through what the average Black and Latinx students have to go through financially. If you guys know some of the stuff that Black and Latinx students are sleeping through, are thugging through to go to college, to go to US higher education, you will be shocked. People are working 2-3 jobs to be able to afford an education. I've seen people that have walked across the stage with their babies in their hand to get their degree. Some Asian American students don't even know what it's like to not even be able to know if you'll attend college the next semester because you can't afford it and you're having to pay tuition by yourself. The financial status of most Asian Americans is more likable to their white peers than other students of color. Why does this even matter? Why do we need people of color in education? Why do we need people of color in the workplace? If there's no Black dermatologists, if there's no Black students going to school, then who is going to make sunscreen for the black people? If there's no Black architects, who is going to build the environment to combat the effects of redlining and homelessness? If there's no Black doctors, who is going to do medicine in such a way that it doesn't affect Black people negatively? It's just an eternal cycle. Americans themselves are not racist. The system is racist. And you need to understand that it didn't just start today.
So how do we respond to claims of reverse racism? How can you answer someone in a simple way about what it means for, say, a black person to be racist or for a woman to be sexist? We covered this in depth on my podcast, The Process with Alex Pe0ple, this week. It's on Apple and Spotify. Dr. Beverly Tatum's answer, her research to that question, is the foundation for this video and the foundation for that podcast episode. It's not the only way to think about this, but I find it helpful and I hope you do too. As promised, this is the shorter breakdown of that, so you could save it or share it for somebody else. I find this easy to think of in 3 parts. Part 1, ask the person you're talking to articulate their definition of racism and prejudice. The answer to this question in this entire conversation is entirely critically dependent on those definitions. Discussing your own experiences or issues that are facing America, you have to know that you're talking about the same thing. 2, articulate your definition of prejudice and maybe steal from Dr. Beverly Tatum. She defines prejudice as a personal opinion that comes from an incomplete assumption. We all get prejudices and we can all be prejudiced. It's because we are all susceptible to information about other people that's incomplete, inaccurate, or stereotypical. Not only are we all susceptible, we're all exposed to it. Number 3, articulate your definition of racism. In her work, Dr. Tatum finds it helpful and useful to define racism as prejudice plus power. You can think of the same thing with sexism. It's personal prejudice combined with social power. What exactly does that mean by social power? Well, you have a person who has a personal prejudice about somebody else, but they are also in that social system backed up by a society that gives them power to do something about that prejudice. It also can mean that the person who holds that personal prejudice is given by society power to benefit from that prejudice. Benefit could be direct or indirect. This is a rough example, but let's say I'm a woman in a corporate setting and there is a male employee who is lower than me, and I decide to withhold a promotion from him just because he is a male. I am discriminating against him using my personal prejudice on the basis of his sex. I've exercised the power I have to do something against him. Let's say a black person sees a woman who in his mind looks like a Karen, so he goes over, harasses, screams at her, and knocks her ice cream cone over. There's a personal prejudice that has been enacted on that woman on the basis of her race and what she looks like. Both are acts of prejudice, and they're biased. Now, definitions of words are what we collectively decide them to be. Dr. Tatum warns us that if we choose to use words like racist, sexist, classist, and prejudice interchangeably, we miss something and we obscure a social reality that's happening. Run headlong into the problem that these definitions obscure power differentials that are ever present and ongoing and still giving benefits or disadvantages to people depending on who they are. We use classist interchangeably. Here's the problem we run into. Say there's a poor white guy who is rallying for better wages outside a rich white guy's house. He's yelling at the rich white guy comes out, he yells at him, calls the police, and gets him thrown off his yard. We could say, if it's all interchangeable, that they're both being classist. What does that obscure? Well, there's a huge power differential at play. This society rewards and protects one person over another. Rich guy has more access to public resources, knows that there are different agencies that will back him and protect him, knows that he can buy or pay for certain things that the other person can't. When they go toe-to-toe, only one person has the backing of public society or multiple options to do something about the conflict. Only one of them has to worry about the consequences of his actions. If we live in a classist society, but the advantages tend to keep going one way, and we decide that everybody can be classist, is that really an accurate picture of what's going on? Helps us understand the situation is to call the poorer guy prejudiced, right? He's prejudiced against the rich guy. But his act of classism is not shoring up the pre-existing classist system that continues to shunt power and resources in one direction. The person who is acting out of a personal assumption or a dislike of somebody because of their status, that action, however, is still shoring up the system that we're all operating in. That is a classist action, not just a prejudiced one. In the American context, racism continues to benefit white-appearing people or white people or people who are light brown, and it disadvantages people who are non-white. Describe all prejudice as racism does not help us understand or make sense of the fact that this prejudice only seems to continue to advantage the same people. Define racism as a system of interlocking advantages best describes what we still see at work in society. There are some prejudices that have more power and have been institutionalized. It's not to say that people who've worked hard to earn what they have not done so. It just means that there are certain roadblocks that are not in their place because of who they are and that are not socialized and institutionalized. It does mean certain people can be complex people and it not be chalked up to their race. Certain people act prejudiced, they can be backed up by the context that is also going along with that prejudiced thought. Someone who doesn't have the cultural or social backing, the social story that makes them more superior to somebody else, their act of prejudice does not carry the same weight or the same power as somebody who's in a more privileged group. That doesn't reverse or hijack an existing caste system. It might be a dent against it, it might do something, it might affect that one individual person, but it's not shoring up a social system. Defining racism as prejudice plus power helps us articulate what we still see happening. It's not the only way we can define it. So we can disagree, right? We could have different working definitions. We just have to make sure when we're talking about it, we're talking about the same thing. The person who does a much better job of explaining this than me is Dr. Beverly Tatum herself. So if you do get a chance to read her book, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria, do yourself a favor and check it out. Hope this was helpful. See you later.
Unfortunately, while the notion of race is illusory, the fact of race in America is not. Whenever I ask an audience of people if they know what the term racism means, they almost universally say they do. I often give a little test to determine if someone is on the same page regarding the term. I first ask my audience if whites can be racist. Of course, everybody agrees they can. I then ask if blacks can be racist, and I get the same response. I then ask them to identify the ways in which white racism adversely impacts the lives of black people as a group, and a list forms. My audience tells me blacks are impacted economically through discriminatory hiring practice. Having little or no access to capital, blacks are seen as lacking business acumen. They are impacted by limited access of health care. They are impacted by overrepresentation in the criminal justice system and underrepresentation in the university system. They are impacted by redlining and other discriminatory practices, barring them from finding housing in areas of their choice. The list can go on and on. This also applies to POCs because usually things like redlining, if you look at inner cities across the US, most times black people live with other ethnicities, whether it be Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Colombians, Guatemalans. Yes, sometimes we do see these ethnic groups living in their own areas, but if you do a lot more digging, our ethnic groups, Hispanic people, end up in the redlining sections. Let me continue. I then ask them to identify how black racism adversely impacts the lives of white people as a group, and there is silence. There is silence because while black people may have prejudice and at times even feel hatred towards white people, perhaps even causing many fears, the reality is that black people lack the power to affect the lives of white people as a group. Black people's feelings towards white people do not preclude a white person's ability to get a loan, receive fair treatment by the justice system, acquire education, etc. This then is racism. It is the belief that people differ among biological and genetic lines, and one's own group is superior to another group. This belief is coupled with the power to negatively affect the lives of those perceived to be inferior. Americans' history is inextricably bounded to these racist ideologies, from the codifying of slavery to the beliefs in its manifest destiny to the treatment of immigrants or undocumented immigrants. Many of Americans' actions continue to conflict with its creed that all men are created equally. And we need to remember that race has no scientific merit outside of sociological classifications, meaning the sociological implications that came from the classifications that were historically put into place, whether you live here in the US or in Latin America, the social implications, the way we speak to one another, the way we behave with one another, values that we impose onto ourselves are sociological, which are real things that have real implications in today's society when it comes to race and racism. This excerpt is from Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, Chapter 1, entitled, I Don't Even Notice Race. If you want to know a little more about this chapter, leave me a comment in the comment section, follow. I will be reading this book on my page to unpack the things that people from the African diaspora must do in order to heal from our past history of slavery.
So this is all I got from this video, and the fact that Charlie Kirk, every time he gets, is looking for someone to influence to join him in his rate the Deceased agenda, and he's always looking for someone to recruit. If you do not agree to him, I just don't understand him. The fact that everyday Black people wake up, he got Black people's name in his mouth every day. There is no day his content creating centers around Black people. He's been race baiting till this very moment. Now let's talk about this. According to him, Black people are taking away jobs from Asians and all of that. Are there no jobs everywhere? And if Black people tend to get jobs, how did that affect every other person? How are they taking away jobs from people? These are the things they keep saying, and then they keep bringing problem, to between Black people and other communities and the rest of it. It's really disgusting that he wakes up every day and all he does is he just want to shine with Black people. That is not cool, And then let's get into race. It's just really kind of not so cool to know that, colored people, I think it's still very hard for them to understand what racism meant. And I don't think it's hard for them to understand, but it's them not just wanting to accept it, because when you tell them that there is nothing like a reverse racism, and they are so mad, very mad, and you tell them that you cannot be racist towards them, they are so mad. I remember being called a privileged black woman, and I am saying that I do not, according to them, they said I am privileged. So how that I also have power to be racist towards them? I simply looked at them and I laughed so hard. And he went further to say that he has worked all his life, and he was not born rich and all that. And where is his privilege? Like we always said that they have privilege. I simply laughed and said that your skin color, his skin color is the privilege. You don't even need more, because they know how important you are in that skin color and the rest of it. So the whole thing is that I think that some of them know what they are doing, and some of them are kind of not mentally mature, especially when it comes to things like race and all that. They find it very hard to speak on it. But I think it's time they really do wake up and understand that they have to put sentiment aside, and then really have a real talk if they really want all this to end. Because most of them, it is from them not being able to talk about it that you see some of them. Like I remember there is a video that I saw online that a child, probably not up to 5 years or more than 5 years, they asked him, what is the secret that your mother doesn't know? And the child said that I said the N-word with a hard R. Woo! How did he learn that? Where did he learn that from? How? See you all in my next video. Bye for now.